Hi, hello, my name is Gabio, and welcome to Positive Review! Today we are talking about the entire Atlas series by Olivia Blake. So in the year of our Lord 2022, when I was deep into my 4th semester in college, I think in university, I did a video on the original Atlas 6, which I am very embarrassed about because I really didn't like the art that I did there, but I really loved the first book. And then when the Atlas Paradox came out a year after, because these books came out so quick, I was neck deep into the final year of my university and I just couldn't do anything about it. But I read it and I really liked it, and today we are talking about the third one mainly, but in theory all of them. The third one, the Atlas Complex, which I'm not being hyperbolic here, but might be the most important piece of literature for my own artistic growth as a writer, and that says a lot. I really love Olivia Blake's writing, and I think this book has some of the most interesting part of the series. This book is divisive, and I know I have a tendency to try to defend things when I know I like them and people don't like them, which is why I did this whole series in the first place, but I don't want to go, people are saying this, but I think this. This video is going to be all about the things I love, and I don't care if you don't like it. So, this is not called short positive review by the fact that I know that I'm going to be talking way too much. Way too much. So this is a review. This is a positive review. I'm not forcing myself to limit this or anything. I'm going to talk, I'm going to ramble. I have 3 pieces I'm really proud of that took so long to draw, so they're going to be in the background throughout the entire video, and I hope you like them because some of them are really, really good. Let's immediately start with the characters as they stand. I don't think you can watch this spoiler free. I think I'm just gonna let myself talk. If you need a hook for the Atlas series, it's like a philosophy book. It's like if reading Plato was also about queer young adults that kind of suck. If that sounds fun, you might love this. A lot of the book is very cerebral, and I think that's great. I love it. Not a lot of action happens, so if your whole thing is that you love big action moments and big explosion or action or movement and plot twists, this is not really it. There's not a lot of plot twists throughout this series. Almost everything happens in a karmic way. Everything is set up very well. It's everybody walks into their own demise the way that makes the most sense for the universe to pay them back what they've done in a way that I love. Basically, my biggest hook for this book is if the idea of 6 contrasting and intertwining character studies sounds fun to you, this is the book for you. That's all I have to say for the pre-spoilers. I really recommend it. Listen, I have recommended this book to so many people, and I think you either love it or you don't, and that's completely fine. I had 2 friends give up on the books, and I have one of them who needs to read them, drop by drop, because it's too much. I devoured these books. I can't have enough. I love them. So yeah, that's all I have to say. I love these books. You should go read them. If you need a reminder to what the Atlas 6, the original book, is, the 6 of these people are in a world where humans exist, but also Medeans exist, which are people who can control a part of the universe in a magic way. And there's witches and Medeans. Witches are less than Medeans. There's also mythical creatures that appear. For example, one character is half satyr, half mermaid, but he looks human, which I see you. By the way, this is my favorite character. Gideon is everything to me. The amount of times I've cried about Gideon reading these books, it's criminal. It's criminal. And these characters are recruited by Atlas Blakely for the Alexandrian Society, which is a society that continues to harbor what was in the Library of Alexandria. They still exist, but they're hidden to the public because it's too powerful, and the society doesn't trust anybody else to respect that knowledge and also use it for good. Knowledge is power. This whole story, this whole book series is about knowledge and how strong and powerful it is and how dangerous it is. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is taken, never given. One of the most important part of this series, narratively, is beware the man who faces you unarmed. If in his eyes you are not the target, then you can be sure that you are the weapon. And I think that's really cool. So to start, I'm going to talk about the characters, because you have to understand that the Atlas 6 main hook is the characters. Like, intrinsically, it's all about the characters. So we're going to go one by one. I'm going to start with Tristan Kane. According to Olivia Blake, Tristan is one of two main protagonists with Parisa, which we're going to talk about later. I agree, because she's the writer, but I think he's like a silent main character, which is interesting, because it's his story, but he doesn't do that much. So Tristan is a Midean that can see illusions, and then later on throughout the series we learn that he can see particles, he can see the universe, he can detect everything. There's, in the very first book, there's a mention that he perceives stuff on such a molecular level that he can tell a life's history in a portrait of someone that lived like 500 years ago just by the lighting. His whole thing is that he perceives. His whole power is perception, and I think that's really cool. He is a complicated character because he is constantly at odds with the fact that he is the next Atlas. When Atlas falls, he is going to be the one to replace him. He is the one that is the most quote-unquote morally good. He is the one that's the most able to take reins, and he is the one who unfortunately cannot convince himself to not be curious. The second character that I really love is intertwined with him a lot, and that's Callum Nova. Callum is the villain of the story, or that's what you're supposed to think. His whole thing is that he is an empath without empathy. Every time I talk about like Olivia Blake, the way she writes characters, you might think that it's like cliche, because like an empath without empathy, it sounds like a Tumblr post, like, oh my god, an empath without empathy. But the way that she takes these concepts and run with them are so brilliant. Callum Nova is a empath. He can manipulate people's emotion, and he feels everything. If he takes someone's pain away, he feels that pain, and that has made him numb to the pain of people. He is incredibly manipulative, and he's the one that was supposed to die on the first year. I'll come back to that later in the plot points. But unfortunately, Tristan was supposed to kill him, and he didn't. In that first book, he convinces someone else in the universe to commit suicide, and then has to live with the repercussions of that for the entire series. That person survives. She's completely fine. In that moment, we are meant to understand that he thinks he's delivering her. He thinks he is liberating her, that she is going to be better for it, because unfortunately he is an incredible pessimist, and he always thinks that the way out is nihilism, but he has no empathy and he doesn't care, so all he wants is power. He becomes a really interesting and very compelling character, especially in the third book. I love him. Next one on our row of characters would probably be Reyna Mori. I really like her too. I like all of these characters, but Reyna Mori is one that I enjoy a lot. She is very reserved. She is a battery, but her power as a battery is explored through the fact that she has control over plants, and if she lets go of her composure, plants burst into eruptions around her. They constantly talk to her, they beg her to let go and to let them bloom. She doesn't like power, she doesn't want it. She is a researcher on mythology. She wants to learn more about the world, but she gets stuck in Atlas's whole conspiracy. Something I really liked about her in the third book is that she starts to believe that she knows better, and that she could save the world by doing a basically entire conspiracy with Callum. And it's insane. She's like going off the deep end, but since a lot of it is through our own eyes, we are led to believe that she is doing a good thing. It's really compelling. The next one on my list is Parisa. She is a telepath and a master manipulator that uses her body and her sexuality a lot to manipulate people. In the first book, Callum and her are basically two examples as to why powerful telepathic magic is dangerous, and they're basically villainous. Throughout the series, she goes from someone that is incredibly solitary and thinks higher of herself and thinks that she is the best, that she needs to take power by any means necessary, toward learning that the world is much more complicated than she is, and to then feel like she is a pawn in someone else's game, to then ending the third book so nihilistic about the world and realizing that she doesn't matter. And that is beautiful in a way. She realizes that nothing that she has done or will ever do will ever amount to to the kind of power that she could go to. But then again, she doesn't need to, because she needs to find herself, and once that herself is found and that she feels safe and human, does power really matter? I really enjoy her characterization. I really enjoy her evolution, because in the first book I didn't really like her. I didn't hate her at all, but like she was like alright. In the second book she started picking up for me a bit, and then in the third book I think she wrapped it up beautifully, especially with her husband. It was so good. Then we are to the last two before our supporting cast, Libby Rhodes. I think her ending is my favorite. It took a while to get there, but I think her story is my favorite probably. The last one is Nico de Verona, which in the first book was my favorite character, and he still is in a way, but I love all these characters, goddamn. Nico de Verona and Libby Rhodes are two sides of the same coin, in the same way that there needs to be a positive and a negative charge to a magnetic field, the same way there needs to be a yin to a yang. They cannot exist without each other. In the first book, Nico was the one with the power. Libby was anxious, she was scared, she was lonely. She only developed the incredible physics power that she developed because her sister died, and she has blamed herself for not finding the way to save her. And she developed this incredible skill and never was able to be the one to use it. She was always the second fiddle to her fucking annoying bitch-ass Nico. Sorry, I swore, but that's how she felt. And then Nico, on the other side, looks for everybody in his life. Nico is unable to take care of himself if he's not taking care of somebody else. And usually it's Gideon, but it's always been also Libby. They can't stand each other, but they can't be away. They simply cannot. And it's insane, and I love it. In the second book, Libby's stuck in the past, and she uses her resourcefulness to murder her ex-boyfriend and to find her way out by using a fuck ton of energy, which brings her to the present, and now she has the upper hand. She completely loses herself. She has seen the future, she has seen what Atlas can do, she has seen what Atlas does, and she kills him. It was incredible. That twist, that reveal was like, I saw it come in and it was really unceremonious, but it was perfect. And then during that time, Nico spends an entire year trying to find any way to bring her back. And then when he does, she is changed. God, I fucking love Nico. And then let's talk about Gideon. Gideon is Nico de Verona's boyfriend. I will not take any question at this time. Gideon is Nico's roommate and then love interest. Nico can never choose whether he prefers, well, if he loves Libby or if he loves Nico. In my heart of hearts, he loves both, even though it's never gonna happen with any of them, which, but Nico de Verona is not able to not love, and Nico de Verona is one of the best character I've ever read. And Gideon is incredible. Gideon is the character I talked about that's half mermaid, half satyr, and he is narcoleptic because he has control and power over dreams. And so in the first book, he communicates a lot with Nico through dreams, and then the second book, he's looking to find Libby through dreams. And then this final book, he is stuck in the manor, in the Atlas manor, and he learns a lot about mythology and about himself, and he is the kind of embodiment of whatever wrong is gonna happen. He is there to like warn them, and it's really compelling. His ending made me cry. I love Gideon. He is everything to me. Then the other two are Ezra and Atlas. So Atlas is the one who brings them back, and the whole reason he's doing this is because he wants to open the universe and create his own version, and create a version where society is not what it is, and create a world where everything is not what it is, and the love of his life didn't die in his arms. He is a very compelling villain, protagonist, anti-hero monster that we hate. He is a very complex character. My favorite part of the third book has to be the one chapter. This writing is really clever. One of the chapter is 1 page long, and it's the Atlas book report, and it asks questions about Atlas. Would you say that Atlas is a good person? Would you say that Atlas did a good thing? Would you say that he's a monster? And it's really compelling. And then Ezra was Libby's ex-boyfriend. And he is a time traveler and a quantum physicist, and he kidnaps her because he created a plan with Atlas, but he can go through the past and the future, so he came back often to see Atlas, but Atlas had decades to convince himself that he knew better and to get worse and worse and worse. When Ezra saw that Atlas would just destroy the world and there was no other way, he removed Libby from the equation, unknowingly that Libby had what it take to kill him. But before dying, he did create an anti-Avenger enemy faction, the Ezra Six, which are other Medeans that I'm not going to get into, but it's basically the overarching plot of the third book, which I really like. But yeah, these are the characters. It took like 20 minutes, but these are all the characters and I love them. These characters are everything to me. There's a couple more, like A-Leaf, which is Gideon's mother, a Gambit addicted mermaid, and there's Tristan's dad, and there's a bunch of characters, but these are the ones that matter. And now let's go into the plot points of each book very quickly and why I love them. So the story of the first book is pretty simple. They all join into the society and they need to kill someone. They have a year to study general subjects. So for the first year, they all study the same thing together as a group. And then in the second year, they all choose a field of study and they try to push it as hard as they can. They are told that 6 of them enter and only 5 of them leave, and they assume that it's just going to be like someone will not go through with it, but halfway through the year they learn that they need to kill someone. And so that's when they start getting closer and it becomes a game theory. It's a political, it's how can I make sure that I'm not the one getting murdered. They elected as a group to kill Callum and to let Tristan do it because Tristan was the closest one to Callum, but neither of them were able to kill the other one, and it stays throughout the entire series. And then, like aforementioned, at the very last moment, Libby Rhodes gets kidnapped by Ezra. Throughout this book, we also learn that Parisa gets obsessed with the, TA, basically the teacher's assistant, called Dalton Ellery, which is another interesting character that I didn't talk about, so I'm going to do it here. Dalton is someone that he's an animator, so he can take corpses, he can take objects, and he can give them life. Like perfect recreation. He can also, I'm pretty sure, create just copies of things that are self-sufficient and exist, like he does with Parisa in the third one. And she gets obsessed with him because he is one of the only person that she cannot fully get into his brain because everything is confused and becomes a puzzle for her to solve. And that's most of her story in the first one, except for the one time that Callum kept saying that they had basically the same power, so they should butt heads to know who wins. And so that's when Parisa said, okay, let's do a battle of wits. She starts by talking to Nico, saying stop thinking about food or whatever. They have the mine. She reads him to filth, basically. She pulls out every information that she can find about him and spew it in his face. And then that's where Callum, as I've said earlier, twists every single one of her thoughts that she's ever had, takes out all of her family history, all of her doubts, all of her emotions, and convinced to kill herself. And as she hits the floor and dies, they come back to the real world because Parisa is shown to be powerful enough to encapsulate all of them into Nico's brain at the beginning while having that fight. Thus, she only technically died in Nico's brain, which is a very interesting concept in my opinion. I think it's really cool. And so Callum will live with that. That is one of the reasons why Callum was elected to die, and it will change a lot of the dynamics coming forward. Tristan, throughout the first book, is trying to discover to what extent his power go, while having whiskey nights with Callum and falling in love with him even though he doesn't want to. He also falls in love with Parisa. All of them are queer and poly, and I love them a lot. The second book starts with Libby in the past trying to figure how to get out of it and unable to, really. She's stuck in a prison made of Ezra's control. She finally escapes by killing him. Then she runs away. Her story is long and throughout the book, but I'm gonna synthesize it. So she is able to find a way out of where he housed her, and she got to California, to the Institute of Magic of California, in which she became not a professor per se, but for 2 years I think she learned the ways. She actually became a student. She got really close to a lot of the professors. She fell in love with one of her college friends. Her name is Belen Jimenez, which later comes to be known as Dr. J. Aranya. Something I find really interesting is that her characters are interesting, and just to show you a bit of lore that's really cool and how jump-packed these books are. She used to be very optimistic about the future. We see that through Libby. She wants to make a difference. She wants to be good. And then she grows up without Libby. She doesn't care anymore. She loses everything. And then Callum at a gala during the first book, I think, or maybe the second one, sees her, and because he's bored, he sees how much jaded she is, so he just like turns everything up a little bit, makes her a little bit more like she used to be, makes her care just enough, and that just enough makes her become a war criminal and turns her into like a fraud and makes her do irreparable things to try to change the world. Just another way how like these characters in these stories are so interesting and different and weird, and I'm like not doing it justice, but it's really cool. So she stays in the past, and the way that she comes to the future is that she blows up a nuke, and that creates irreparable damage in the sector where she does it. But she gets back home, and that's the end of the second book on her hand. On the other students' part, they all try to come to terms with the fact that they are now 5 and that they are trying to figure out where Libby is, because Libby's still alive. They can feel that the library, which is living and breathing, wants one of them dead. It's trying to kill one of them, and well, it's seeping their power. They can feel that something's wrong and that it's not been paid accordingly, and they try to shuffle with the fact that like Libby's gone and also that they don't want to die. And it's really interesting. Reina and Nico become distant because Nico cares too much about too many people, but he cannot spread himself too thin, and so he doesn't care enough about her and her opinion, and so she becomes even more distant and then starts like allying with Callum. Callum and Tristan have constant fight/love. Tristan and Nico work together to try to find a way to bring Libby back, which they do. They blow up a bomb at the same time that she blows up a nuke, and that creates enough energy for Nico to create a wormhole. Well, with her help, obviously, but yeah, they get back, and at that same time Parisa is able with Gideon, because Gideon, to try to help Nico, works under his mother, and his mother asks him to deliver a prince, and the prince turns out is Dalton, which Parisa decides to protect but is unable to, and so Gideon lets out Dalton from his own prison mine made by Atlas, because Dalton is dangerous and power hungry, and he wanted to survive his class, so he hid this part of himself. And in the same vein, Atlas was able to use that version of himself outside to like control him and manipulate him, and so he gets set free. And then the third one, the Atlas Complex, is probably one of my favorite books I've read in a while. So after the end of the second book, all of them have graduated except for Libby, but they are graduated and all of them are dispersed. And at the end of the second book, to try to make them survive the assassins that want to kill them, they switch place with each other. So for example, Parisa, that was expected to go back to France, goes to New York instead of Libby and Nico. So when they're expecting physicists, she is there manipulating them and surviving. The third book is called The Atlas Complex, and the point of it is that they decide to go through with Atlas's theory of opening the multiverse. The way it was set up was that the 6 of them were chosen by Atlas for the purpose of opening the multiverse. They needed someone to power up the other people. Reina. They needed 2 people who were able to put their physic power at work and rely on each other to hold the universe on their shoulders. 2 people were strong enough to do that, Nico and Libby. They needed someone to see the universe physically. Tristan, he needed someone to replace him. Parisa was the only one that has the same kind of power, like the only one that he can probably lose to in a telepathic fight, and then Callum was the sacrificial goat, is how it was set up, and all of that was for them to open the multiverse. So the third book is them trying to outrun the people who want to kill them, so the Ezra sex, but it's a very philosophical, very slow burn book, basically, where everyone like kind of realizes that they want to do the experiment and they need to do it. They get ready and they do it, but with reduced numbers. We're gonna start with Parisa, because she is probably the most like unique in this. So she ran away with Dalton, and with him they ran away. They're trying to survive on their own, and she realizes that the new Dalton that has been liberated is very violent and has ideas of grandeur, and he wants to open the multiverse, and he is ready to replace her with an automaton. And she realizes that he was going to kill her, and so she runs away with nothing on her back, and she fucking flees. Throughout her story, she's trying to ally with Reina and Callum, which on their their own bullshit, are trying to fix the elections. They are doing their own conspiracy. They are influencing people with Reyna powering the fuck out of Callum's power over emotions, pulling everybody to like change decisions so that they can like make the world a better place, I guess. And then let's talk about these two. So Callum throughout the entire book follows Reyna around for reasons. He believes in her, he believes in what she believes in, and he wants to help her even though he doesn't really care. The entire book he's just trying to win back Tristan. He loves the cat and mouse chase, and throughout the entire book he contacts him via text to convince him that he's ready to kill him. And obviously he would never do that. And his end was actually the most tragic and the most brutal, and the one that I was really sad about, but I loved. At the end of the book, Tristan gets kidnapped by his own dad, and Callum came to save him. As he enters, he dies. He gets shot, and in his last seconds he says that he's happy because the last thing he saw was Tristan's face, which is so sad. Reyna wants to make the world a better place, and so she kind of has a crush on a politician that she loves. So she goes to one of his public meetings and has the unfortunate event of being there while a shooting happens. Cops are all around, and the cops are fake. They're just like people who are trying to kill her because they want to kill people from the society. And so she lets the plans go. They open a rift under her. She kills a bunch of people through plans, even though she's scared, and she finally escapes and goes back to the house, realizing that nothing that she could do would ever be great, and then finding great solace with Teresa, actually, realizing that they might be depressed, but they can be depressed together, and that's sufficient. And that was actually a really, really pretty nihilistic ending. This book is really sad and dark and moody and like very nihilistic, but I thought that was like so good, and I liked it a lot. I talked about Tristan, so let's go back to Tristan. Tristan works on opening the multiverse. He realizes that Atlas is dead, and he decides that he needs to open the multiverse because of Libby. He says that they should never do it, but he does it anyway because curiosity wins over, Dalton wins over. He needs to do it. They open the universe with Libby and Nico, and he peeks through and he sees so many different universes. And that's, I said my favorite part of the book was Atlas, but I was lying. My favorite part of the book is the part where we see all the universes happen in a very quick succession, and it's so cool. It goes into a multiverse where they're on a spaceship, and they go into a multiverse where Atlas is alive, and a multiverse where he has conversation with Atlas, a multiverse where he never existed. And then one line is in half of the universe that doesn't matter because Callum is dead, and another half of the universe that doesn't matter because Callum is still alive. It's really interesting, and it opens up like what life could be and kind of the butterfly effect, and how all of this relies on Tristan's shoulders, and how at the end of the book everything is canon and none of it is, which is always, when you do a multiverse, I think that's the best way to approach it. And I thought that like reading that part was really, really interesting. And so after he opens up the multiverse, he decides to confront his dad, gets kidnapped, sees Callum die in front of him, and then that's where he's like, in half the universe it doesn't matter because he died. The other part, it's not important because Callum survived. And in both cases it's unideal because he will never be able to love Callum and he'll never be able to hate Callum. Do I talk about Nico? Nico de Verona's story in this was so sad. I loved it a lot. It's once that he has figured out that Libby is back but different, he decides that he needs to go on with their theory. He's the one who's pushing it the most. They can do it, he needs to do it. Gideon is with him. He realizes that he loves Gideon. They finally start like dating kind of, and they are in love, and they sleep together, and they share a living space. But he opens up the multiverse. And then let's talk about Libby, because Libby's turn. Libby kills Atlas when she comes back. As I said, she kills him straight up. She has conflicted thoughts about the fact that she knows better than most, but at the end of the day she is the one that wants to go through with Atlas experiments, and they do. And in that moment where she has the entirety of the world on her shoulders, and she notices that Ezra wants to do bad things, she notices that they can never do that they can never go back when they open it, and that it is impossible, and that she made a mistake. She takes all the weight of the universe on her shoulders. She takes all of the power, the fucking sun exploding, and to cut the experiment short, she puts it all on Nico. she sends the entirety of the power on Nico, instantly killing him and destroying the experiment. Gideon is heartbroken. Tristan will never be able to forgive her really for that, cutting their relationship short because they were dating at that point. Dalton tries to reanimate Nico because he needs the experiment to go through, and Libby is left broken. And my favorite ending, and I didn't think that it would go there, but my favorite ending is that she goes back to her sister's house, well, her childhood house, and her story ends not in a big explosion, not in pain, but in her finding and reading her dead sister's journal, and reading it and realizing that the last few things that her sister said about her was how much that she hopes that Libby gets to explore life and to have an actual nuanced take on life and stop trying everything to be good and actually be a nuanced person and take the pain and take the scariness and how dying is scary. And that the last page of the journal says, I love my sister. I want my sister to be good, but I'll say one last mean thing, which is her bangs are really ugly. And then Libby cries, and that's the end. This part was really interesting for me, and I think it was like a perfect bookend to her story, because in the first book, she tries so hard to be more than she is, and she tries so hard to break out of the perfect girl conundrum, the good girl trauma that she's experiencing. And then throughout the second one, she realizes like she is forced out of it through trauma. Explosions and death and killing people. And then in the third one, she's lost herself. And then she goes back to the most fundamental part of herself and the kid trying to impress her dying sister. And then seeing that even then, the person that she was not quite enough. It's really emotional in a way that like this book and this series and Olivia Blake in general can hit really, really hard and really, really good. And now you're probably wondering about Gideon and my favorite character and what happens when his boyfriend dies. Boy, can I tell you, I was convinced that the second half of the book that he was gonna die. I was very distraught. I was very scared. Gideon survives, but ultimately chooses to not be in the realms of mortals anymore. He decides basically perpetual sleep. He's gonna stay awake sometimes, but he's mostly always sleeping and exploring the worlds of dreams where he is the king and just dealing there away from what hurts him. And then one day he's in his sleep, Nicolas Feder de Verona shows up, and Gideon is not quite sure if it's a real Nico, because we know that the library can absorb souls in a way, and we're not sure if that's a real Nico, if that's like his ghost, if he's still alive. But what we know is that this is real, and Gideon is so happy and so sad, and that's one of the pieces that I drew. It's just like Gideon's conflicted and like so happy to see Nico again. It was so sad. I cried. Anyway, so yeah, that's basically where all of the main characters end up. Those are the plot points. Again, there's not that much plot because that's not the point of this book. The point of this book is decorticating these characters, understanding what they are to the core, what connects them, what fuels them. I love this book. Let's talk a bit about the prose, because I think it's one of the most important part of the series. Olivia Blake, one of the things that she does and that I'm trying to absorb into my own writing a bit too much even, is she loves writing in negatives, as in saying something is unlike something as a way to describe it. I don't know how to say it, but using negation as a comparison point, and it works so well. It's little details like that. It's the fact that a lot of it is introspective and it's questioning. And she uses the same sentences over and over and over again, but they change meaning every time she uses them. She has a way of like pulling these characters open and letting their flaws and their unreliableness to the world. And that's, I think, that's the point that I love the most about these books, is that this is a book about 6, let's say 9 characters who are deeply unlikable and unreliable, that make their life seem so much better than it actually is. It is a multiple POV. The writing is exquisite because it explores the fact that these characters think that they're doing the best thing that they can at all times, or that they're questioning whether they're doing the best thing at all times. It explored a concept of philosophy, of the world, of quantum physics. At the end of the book, I read the closing, the acknowledgements, while I'm still crying about the book. And one of the things that was really interesting, and I think is why I love the series so much, is that it is a series that is, at the end of the day, kind of hopeful in the small things. This book is nihilistic. It is very dark and very, these characters are depressed. But at the end of the day, it stemmed from when the writer, Olivia Blake, felt completely angry at the world and was struggling to see a way to save the world or to make the world a better place. And so she wrote these characters that are angry at the world in the hopes that it can change the world, and in a way came to the realization that starting from scratch would not help anything. It would just make the capitalism worse. It would just make stuff worse. We need to grow ourselves as people, tear down the companies that are exploiting people. We need to change what is there and not wish, in a way, for a world that's better. We need to make it better. And I don't know, I feel like this book could be really studied philosophy-wise. It could really be studied about like how you interpret the book and what it feels to you. I feel like there's not one like good interpretation as much as there is how it made you feel. Just like any good philosophy book should make you feel. It's not a philosophy book, it is a fiction novel, but the pieces of philosophy that are in this book are so very dear to me, and it's one of the reasons I like it so much. The pacing of it is really good. Again, some people don't like it, but she has a way of like writing scenes that are kind of like completely severed from time. So if your goal is to like read something that is perfect like chronological order and you know exactly when it is, sometimes between chapters there's weeks that pass and it's not really clear and it's not very told, and that works. I don't mind it. I really love it. This book is really, really influential for the book that I'm writing right now. It has influenced a lot the way I treat characters, the way I treat prose, the way I'm trying to navigate plot points and character points and interactions and unreliableness. And at the end of the day, that's maybe why I love it so much. It's probably because it influenced me so much, but this series is so very dear to my heart. I think it is one of the strongest series in my personal view since the Hunger Games, and if you know me, you know that the Hunger Games was like revolutionary for me. So I think that's about it for the book. 35-minute review is I've not done that in years. Let's talk about the art pieces because I need to. I spent weeks on them because I wanted them to be perfect, and I am so happy with them. So the first one that I did was the Nico and Gideon one, and it is very dear to my heart. In that one, I wanted to represent Gideon's surprise and sadness to see Nico again, and Nico's constant grin, constant like, I got you, I'm here for you. The pose is also very much inspired by Kaoru and Shinji from Evangelion, in parts because I've seen Gideon as Kaoru more than one time throughout the book series, which is funny, but I don't know, it's an archetype that I see for him. The designs and the clothing are based upon little Kimura that has been working with Olivia Blake for years, actual illustrations. And yeah, I'm really proud of this piece. There was some problems designing it, but I love it. At the end, just like I did in my original piece that I'm still embarrassed about, I decided to make the borders like the book cover, and so it's like the universe is talking to them. I'm really happy with how it came out, and then I wanted to play with the colors of their power intertwining, and I don't know, I really love it. I think it looks really cool, and I'm really happy with that one. The next one that I did was the Thinkers. This is based on my favorite illustrations from the entire series, which is the one with Callum and Reyna in the second book. I'm gonna post it here. I love this image a lot, and so I wanted to recreate a bit in my style that Reyna face and her confliction and the way that she's unsure. Like, I wanted the same vibe, but in this one she's more unsure of herself. And then Callum and Parisa, because they're both in the same kind of power struggle. Callum looking smug and not caring because he doesn't care. He lost, he's just in for Tristan at this point. And then Parisa being a lot more like scared, and with Mascara running because she is scared and she realizes that she can do it. The edges are designed after the second book, which is the Atlas Paradox, and their powers of Parisa and Callum are a lot softer in shades. And then I really wanted Reyna's plans to be forefront, to be the most important, to be like the piece de resistance if you want. And I really like this one. It's not my favorite, it's probably my least favorite from the three, but I would still be really proud if like that sold as a print or something. And then the third one, which is probably my favorite, is the moment where Libby decides to sacrifice Nico. I think it was really important for me to represent this because it was one of my favorite moments. It's tragic, it's dramatic, and I loved it. I also played with the fact that this book has two covers. It has the UK and the US cover. So Tristan, being the British man that he is the UK cover with the blue, and he is reaching for the world, and the world is reaching back, and he's enlightened, and he sees the world. And then at the bottom in the red is Libby, seeing what the world does, seeing that if they go through with it, she cannot do it. So on her right, she has her past self with the short bangs from the first book that is scared, that is anxious, that doesn't want her to go through with it. And on her left, the one from the second book, the one that's ready to action, that tells her to kill, that tells her that power is not given, it is taken, and it is her time to take it. And then there's our Libby, conflicted, but with the world in her hands, ready to strike. And I love this piece. I think it's one of the best pieces I've done in a while. I am so obsessed with it, and I'm really happy with it. Thank you so much for coming around. I know this is a long video, it's dreadful. I took a really long time to work on each pieces, so I really wanted to take them the time it needed to make sure this video felt proper, felt complete. I talked my shit. Obviously, I'm not gonna do like this style of video super often because first of all, I feel like I'm boring. I don't feel like I'm the best at expressing myself. I have ADHD and it's sometimes hard to talk like this, but also I can talk for hours, but I'm trying to edit it to make it the most enjoyable as I can without rambling too much. I don't really like having actual scripts for videos like this that talk about what I like because I feel like it becomes really like boxy and then I have to like redo a fuck ton of lines because I keep fucking up. And my favorite part of doing these videos is not necessarily the editing part. It's really much the I want to talk to you and come sit down, we're gonna have a talk. So yeah, all of these pieces are all around my social medias. That's all around the screen. I really love it. I'm really proud of these pieces. That being said, again, everything's around the screen, and as I said last time, I have a day job now, so less videos, less frequent, but I have a couple planned. The next one might be a bit longer too, but that's because I need to do something for a game that I'm playing, and the best way to do that is to make it content. So I'm very excited about that, and then we're gonna go back to our short positive review shortly. Thank you so much for coming around. It was a pleasure, and I'll see you someday.